Hey everyone, this is Haunted Mario. Welcome back. We are doing a brand new evidence reveal. This one will be for one of the locations that we visited during our Ghosts of America road trip that we took back in July. This particular evidence reveal will delve into the audio evidence that we captured at a location called Pea Ridge National Military Park. And this is in Arkansas. It is one of the oldest and most intact Civil War battlefields in America. And before I get started, I just want to let you know that Haunted Peach will not be joining us for this video. She will be joining me for the Waverly Hills Sanatorium evidence reveal video, and for our next podcast where we'll talk about all of the locations that we visited overall and some of the personal experiences that we had at some of these locations. But for today, we're going to primarily focus on the evidence or audio recordings that we managed to capture EVPs for during our time at Pea Ridge National Military Park. So this was a location that was not originally on our plan as far as places to stop at and explore on our way to Waverly Hills Sanatorium. This was something that was added on probably a couple of weeks prior to the actual trip. I was mainly looking for a spot in Arkansas where we could actually stop and explore and was open to the public, something historic, much like most of the stops that we had on our entire trip. And so this one in particular caught my eye, mainly because it was a Civil War battlefield. I will say that I made some errors in planning our trip and didn't take into account the time zone changes, and so that kind of hindered us as far as the time that we were allowed to spend at some locations, in particular this location. But we certainly lucked out being able to explore the battlefield of this historic location. So Pea Ridge National Military Park is the site of a major battle that took place during the Civil War, in where Union soldiers fought and defeated Confederate soldiers to keep control of Missouri. This is a crucial battle, and I believe something like 26,000 soldiers in total fought over a span of 2 or 3 days, and many thousands of soldiers died. Lots of blood was spilled on the ground, and this place has a very daunting and heavy energy to it, and I'm not big on energy. You've heard me say that multiple times, but this place was sort of an exception. When we walked onto the battlefield, and let me just say we were lucky because we showed up late, and the visitor center, which has all of the information regarding the history on this particular battle, was closed. Thanks to some locals that were still there, we were then informed that the actual grounds and the battlefield are open until sundown. So we got lucky enough. We showed up, I think, around probably 5 or 6 p.m. and we explored the battlefield and the grounds around the battlefield on a sort of self-guided driving tour, and basically got to drive all the way around the property. And let me just say that this place is massive. There was so much that we did not get to explore, but we did see a lot of the other battlefields. The fields themselves still have the original barricades that were built by the Union and Confederate soldiers. The cannons are still there. There's probably like 30 cannons spread throughout, and there's this almost half a mile long line of about 13 cannons that was pretty spectacular to be there. So we walked onto the field, and we had the opportunity, and with the time that we had the opportunity to go down onto the fields, go up to the cannon lines, and do a couple of EVP sessions on the canon lines, specifically the first canon and the fourth canon in the lineup. And during that time, we didn't necessarily experience too much as far as personal paranormal experiences. I know I had one, and Haunted Peach had one, and we'll discuss those in a future podcast when we talk about all the places that we went to. But it seems that even though we didn't at the time feel like we had caught anything, on review of our recordings, we actually captured a handful of EVPs that are probably some of the most haunting EVPs that we've ever captured. So we're just going to get started here and go through some of these captures, and it'll be the same format as before. I'll play the audio clip a few times so you get an idea of what to listen for. Then I will highlight the actual EVP and isolate that and replay that, and then we'll review the isolated EVP, and I'll give my opinions on what Haunted Peach and I have agreed the EVPs are actually saying. So let's begin here. I do apologize for some of the background noise that you might hear. I do have the windows open. It's the first day of fall, and it's finally cooling down, so it's healthy for the house to have the windows open. It keeps it cool without us having to blast the air conditioning like we have done most of the summer. Let's see, the first clip, this will be from, in fact, we're going to do 2 clips from the first canon, and the remaining clips will be from the fourth canon. So the first canon was the very first EVP session that we did. There were 2 questions in particular. One, we'll start off with one. This is a Class B EVP. This was after a question that I had asked myself, Cassie, Haunted Peach, and a third person that joined us on the trip. His name is Victor Westcott. You've heard me talk about him before with deceased interferences. So we were on the battlefield and we were doing an EVP session, and I didn't, just to give you guys perspective, this is an open, large open field surrounded by woods. The only thing that we heard during that time was birds, some bugs, and the wind. And if I recall correctly, there were probably about 3 or 4 people riding bikes and walking the trails. But at this particular moment when we were on the battlefield, there was absolutely nobody around us or near us, and we could see no one at this time. So that just gives a little more credit to the fact that we actually captured stuff when these voices that you'll hear in the EVPs appear to be closer to the recorders, where they shouldn't be, because there were only 3 of us. So, and we were all facing each other, so we could all see what we were doing. So I can definitely attest that it definitely wasn't one of us talking for any of these clips. So keep that in mind. Alright, let's get started with the first one here. Again, it's a Class B EVP. I'm going to play the full clip. You're going to listen for my question, and then you'll hear silence, and then you'll hear a voice, and then we'll go ahead and highlight that and revisit it. Here's the first clip. Were you wounded? Were you wounded? Were you wounded? Were you wounded? Okay, so that was the first clip in its entirety. You'll hear me ask a question, were you wounded? To which there is a reply that we did not hear at the time. Now there is a story behind the reason why I asked this question. It's part of a personal paranormal experience, and that's something that I'll share on our podcast talking about the whole trip. I don't really want to go into the analysis of what made me ask that question, but that was a particular question that I asked at the moment. I felt very compelled to ask that for obvious reasons that I'll go into in another podcast. There's definitely a response there, and I wasn't necessarily expecting there to be a response, but upon review of the audio recordings, there definitely is one there. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and isolate just that clip, and I'll do some volume amplification. No other editing has been done to the clip. All I'm doing is increasing the volume. This keeps the validity of the EVP itself. It just helps you hear it clearer. So here is the isolated clip. I'm going to play it a few times, and then I'll give my opinions on what Haunted Peach and I agree is being said in the EVP. Here it is. Okay, that was the isolated clip. As you can hear, there is a male voice there. It's very subtle. We have classified it as a Class B EVP. It's definitely a quick response. To Haunted Peach and I, we are hearing a full sentence reply. It's an intelligent response to my question. It sounds like to us that the voice is saying, I was wounded. And we feel that that is what it's saying, at least it's what vocally it sounds like is coming across in the EVP. It's very possible that it may be something else, and if you hear something else, please comment in the comment section down below so that we can reanalyze the EVP clip. But we are of the opinion that what is being said in the EVP clip is, I was wounded. So it's a pretty astonishing EVP to get right off the bat. This was very early on in the EVP session, probably about a minute or two in. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and replay that for you. Listen for the male voice saying what we believe is, I was wounded. Here it is again. Okay, so that was the EVP clip of what we believe was a soldier telling us that he was wounded, confirming for me my personal paranormal experience. And again, I'll get into that more in a future podcast. Let's move on to the next EVP clip. This was also captured at the first canon. Now, in the EVP clip, you'll hear me ask what year did the soldier or soldiers serve. And then you'll hear some silence, and then you'll hear a response before we start talking again. This is a pretty astonishing EVP. I'm definitely going to classify it as a Class B EVP. It's sort of a Class B/A. Haunted Peach and I were pretty blown away by not only what was being said in the EVP, but the way it was spoken. So here's the full clip in its entirety. Again, we're going to play it a few times, and then we'll review it. Here it is. In what year did you serve? 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 Okay, that was the second EVP clip. You'll hear me ask, what year did you serve? And you'll hear a response that comes through of a male voice. So what we're going to do now is we're going to isolate just the actual EVP clip itself. Again, some volume amplification has been done, no other editing. This is to help you hear it clearer, or at least louder so that you can hear it clearer and interpret the EVP better. So here is the isolated EVP. Here we go. Okay, so that was the isolated EVP. I've replayed it quite a few times for you so that you can figure out what's being spoken. Two things to note about this particular EVP. One, it's an intelligent response and it's a direct response to my question. Two, the accent of the voice that's speaking is actually in a southern accent. We noticed this when we were listening to the audio clip over and over again, that there was definitely that southern accent, what's the right word, like a twang of the way that certain words are spoken. And Haunted Peach and I, actually Haunted Peach was the one that deciphered what was actually being said or spoken in the clip, and I 100% agree with her in what is actually being spoken. Now again, if you hear something different, please leave a comment in the comment section letting us know what you hear in the audio clip. But we believe that the audio clip is of a male saying, "The year of the Lord." And the way that this male responds, it sounds more like the year of the Lord. It sounds like a little southern accent, and my accent is horrible, but I'm just trying to illustrate for you vocally what we were hearing in the actual audio clip. And we hear it saying, just like that, the year of the Lord. And I'm going to go ahead and replay that for you a few times. And yeah, give me your opinions on what you think about this particular Class B EVP. So here's that clip again. This is the isolated EVP, and Haunted Peach and I are hearing the year of the Lord. Here it is. Okay, so that was the second EVP clip that we captured at Canon 1. Pretty astonishing EVP already. This is just in our first EVP session. We actually only did 2, and we explored around the battlefield and the ground. So of the 2 sessions, we caught audio responses in both of them. So we got pretty lucky there. And we really weren't expecting anything paranormal to come out of this location, but it did. And so because we captured these audio clips, we definitely wanted to share that with you in a separate evidence reveal. So that's why we're here today, to review that with all of you. Share what we found with all of you. Okay, so let's move on to the next session. Now the following session, we walked down a little bit, I would say about 40, maybe 50 yards to the 4th canon in the lineup. And we did another EVP session there, asking fairly different questions than we did the first time around, and we definitely did get some responses from that session. So let's start off with the first one here. This will be the first one, and it's probably one of the saddest EVPs that we have ever captured. The first time I heard this, and Haunted Peach heard it, we felt there was no mistake in what was being spoken. It's another Class B EVP, but given the location, the history of the location, and what actually happened there, the people that died there, This particular EVP was fairly heartbreaking to hear. So we're gonna play the full clip in its entirety. You'll definitely hear me say, "Are we overstepping our bounds?" And then you'll hear some silence, and then a voice will come through. Another male voice, of course. This one in particular, we don't feel is an intelligent response. We feel more that this is a residual voice that we managed to capture. Again, this is not none of these were heard at the time, but this one in particular definitely strikes a chord in dealing with war and the effects of that on those soldiers that fought during the Civil War. So here's the clip in its entirety, and you'll hear me talk, then you'll hear silence, and then you'll hear the actual EVP. So here it is. Are we overstepping our bounds? 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 Okay, that was the entire clip. Let's go ahead and isolate that and volume amplify the actual EVP clip so that you can hear what's being spoken. Here it is. Okay, so that was the isolated EVP clip. As you can hear, there is a male voice that responded, or at least a male voice that came through. Not a particular direct response to what we were asking, but definitely a voice that was there. And a pretty sad EVP. You can hear the desperation in the tone of the voice. Haunted Peach and I feel that the voice was actually saying, "Please God, help me." It's fairly quick, but you hear the desperation, like, "Please God, help me." Very desperate words for someone, especially a soldier during the Civil War, with all the chaos that's going around him at the time. Thousands of soldiers, blood everywhere, cannons being fired, guns being fired, people being impaled by bayonets, and yeah, it was definitely hell on earth for someone like that during that time. And it doesn't surprise me that we would capture an EVP that says, "Please God, help me." So again, once more reiterate that if you hear something different, please feel free to comment in the comment section and let us know what you're hearing. These are all open to interpretation, and we hope that you're hearing what we are. There's really no way of truly knowing. This is just what we are formulating based on the audio that we captured. So here's the isolated EVP clip again. Again, pay attention and listen. You'll hear what sounds like a very desperate soldier crying out, "Please God, help me." Here it is. Okay, so that was the isolated EVP clip. Definitely one of the saddest EVP clips we've ever captured, and one of the most haunting ones. we've ever captured as well to date. Okay, so let's move on to the last EVP here that we're going to share. This one is by far a Class A EVP, and it is one that we captured at the 4th canon. This one, among all the others, was definitely one that stood out the most because it is the loudest EVP that we have. I'll do some volume amplification for it, but I don't really feel it's that necessary because it's not words that were captured. This was it's a loud sound that we captured that we definitely did not hear when we were on the battlefield. If you know your Civil War history pretty well, you'll know that this particular sound that we captured was very significant for that specific battle, or at least that time during our American history. So this has to be one of the best EVP captures we've ever had. As far as residual activity, this is definitely residual. You'll hear me ask a question, and you'll hear some silence, and then you'll hear something that sounds very obvious and out of place. Here's the clip. Would you have decided not to fight in the war? Would you have decided not to fight in the war? Would you have decided not to fight in the war? Would you have decided not to fight in the war? Okay, that was the clip in its entirety. You'll hear, after I ask the question, there's a moment of silence, and then you'll hear a noise, a loud noise that almost sounds like chanting. Again, we didn't hear this at the time. This was we only came across this during review, and we're pretty blown away by this one for sure. This is definitely a Class A capture of residual paranormal activity. We were kind of left with ourselves scratching our heads because we didn't exactly know what was happening. Now, what you'll hear, I'm going to isolate the clip, and what you'll hear is what sounds like chanting or some kind of like battle going on. It sounds like almost sounds to me like hundreds, if not thousands, of people screaming all at once and like in unison. But we definitely didn't know at the time when we heard this audio clip what was actually happening. So here's the isolated clip, and I'll get more into that here in a moment. Here it is. Okay, that was the isolated EVP clip. So when I originally heard this, I tagged it as a battle cry, because that's kind of what it sounded like to me, just a battle cry. Well, it has been a very long time since I have done any research on Civil War history. I really haven't gone back to delve into the history of the Civil War. So hear me out here when I say that I didn't know at the time what we were actually, or I didn't understand at the time what we were actually capturing. Again, when this happened, neither of us heard it. Heard it on the recording, and I tagged it as a battle cry. So I got curious. and I went on YouTube and I looked up Civil War battle cry. And the first video that popped up was a video of a congregation of Civil War Confederate veterans. And this occurred several years after the Civil War happened. So these are older men, but they are war veterans of the Civil War. They were Confederate soldiers, and they start doing this battle cry. And I hear this battle cry, and it sounds eerily similar to what we captured on the battlefield. So when I heard this recording on YouTube of these veteran Confederate soldiers doing their battle cry, and it sounded almost identical to what we captured, I was completely mind blown on what we actually captured. And the Confederate soldiers had a name for this battle cry that they did during the Civil War. It was called the Rebel Yell. And Haunted Peach and I 100% believe that we definitely captured what was the Rebel Yell on that battlefield when we were there. So I'm going to go ahead and re-isolate that clip for you and play it again. This is 100% authentic, and it is our best capture of this location at Pea Ridge National Military Park, and you're taking a step back into the past and hearing the rebel yell of the Confederate soldiers. Here it is. Okay, there was the isolated clip. Again, very awesome captures that we got at Pea Ridge National Military Park. We highly recommend that anyone passing through Arkansas, or if anyone is curious about Civil War history, that they visit this historic place, because it definitely has an otherworldly feel to it. And there's a plethora of history to be learned from this particular location. And it's definitely a place that Haunted Peach and I will return to sometime in the future. Okay, so that completes this evidence reveal for our time at Pea Ridge National Military Park. Thank you very much for joining me on this particular evidence reveal. We love doing what we do, and stay tuned for more evidence reveals coming. We have one for Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, the most haunted cemetery in the U.S., and of course our long-awaited Waverly Hills Sanatorium evidence reveal that will be coming very soon. So thank you for joining us. We appreciate your support, and just as always, happy haunting.